What if I told you that the single most important relationship you will ever have in your entire life is not with your partner, your family, or your friends, but with yourself? What if I told you that every failure, every missed opportunity, every moment of self-doubt, and every time you've settled for less than you deserve, all stems from one fundamental problem? You don't truly love yourself? Most people spend their entire lives seeking love, validation, and acceptance from others, never realizing that the love they're desperately searching for can only come from within. They chase relationships, achievements, and external validation, thinking that once they get enough approval from the outside world, they'll finally feel worthy. But here's the brutal truth. If you don't love yourself, no amount of external love will ever be enough. The people who truly succeed, who radiate confidence, who attract the right opportunities and relationships, who seem unshakable no matter what life throws at them, they all have one thing in common. They've mastered the art of self-love. Not the superficial, Instagram quote version of self-love, but the deep, unshakable, scientifically backed kind that transforms everything. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will understand the psychology behind self-love, why most people struggle with it, and, most importantly, how to build an unbreakable relationship with yourself that becomes your greatest competitive advantage in life. This isn't just about feeling good. This is about rewiring your brain for success, confidence, and genuine happiness. Chapter 1. The hidden epidemic destroying your life. Here's a statistic that will shock you. Studies show that over 85% of people have low self-esteem and struggle with self-acceptance. That means the vast majority of humans on this planet are walking around with a fundamental rejection of who they are. They don't like themselves, they don't trust themselves, and they certainly don't love themselves. But here's what's even more disturbing. Most people don't even realize this is their problem. They think their issues stem from other people, from circumstances, from bad luck, or from not having enough money, success, or recognition. They spend years trying to fix everything external while completely ignoring the internal foundation that determines everything else. Think about it this way. If you had a friend who constantly criticized you, told you that you weren't good enough, reminded you of every mistake you'd ever made, and never believed in your potential, would you want to spend time with that person? Would you trust their judgment? Would you feel confident and motivated around them? Of course not. Yet this is exactly how most people treat themselves every single day. The voice in your head, your internal dialogue, is often more cruel and destructive than your worst enemy would ever be. You tell yourself things you would never say to another human being. You hold yourself to impossible standards while making excuses for everyone else. You forgive others for their mistakes, but punish yourself for years over things that happened in the past. This internal relationship, this constant self-rejection and self-criticism, creates a cascade of problems that affect every area of your life. When you don't love yourself, you make decisions from a place of unworthiness. You accept less than you deserve because, deep down, you don't believe you deserve better. You stay in toxic relationships because you don't think you're worthy of healthy love. You don't pursue your dreams because you don't believe you're capable of achieving them. The lack of self-love shows up in subtle ways too. You might find yourself constantly seeking approval from others, unable to make decisions without validation. You might be a perfectionist, never feeling like anything you do is good enough. You might engage in self-sabotage, unconsciously destroying opportunities just when things start going well. You might have trouble setting boundaries, constantly saying yes when you want to say no, or letting people treat you poorly because you don't value yourself enough to demand respect. Research in neuroscience has shown that people with low self-worth have heightened activity in the brain's threat detection system. Their brains are constantly scanning for danger, rejection, and criticism, even when none exists. This chronic state of hypervigilance is exhausting and prevents them from taking the risks necessary for growth and success. When you don't love yourself, you live in constant fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being found out as a fraud. This fear becomes the lens through which you see the world, and it colors every decision you make. You play it safe. You shrink yourself to fit into other people's expectations. and you never fully express who you really are. But perhaps the most tragic consequence of not loving yourself is that you become disconnected from your own wisdom, intuition, and authentic desires. You spend so much time trying to be who you think others want you to be that you lose touch with who you actually are. You make career choices based on what will impress others rather than what fulfills you. You enter relationships based on who others approve of rather than who truly makes you happy. The good news is that self-love is not some mystical concept that only a lucky few can access. It's a skill that can be learned, developed, and strengthened. But first, you need to understand that this isn't about becoming narcissistic or arrogant. True self-love is about developing a healthy, realistic, and compassionate relationship with yourself. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would show a good friend. When you truly love yourself, everything changes. You make decisions from a place of strength rather than fear. You attract healthier relationships because you model what it looks like to treat yourself well. You pursue opportunities that align with your values and desires rather than what you think will gain approval. You bounce back from setbacks faster because your self-worth isn't dependent on external outcomes. Most importantly, when you love yourself, you give others permission to love you fully as well. You stop trying to earn love through performance and start receiving love as the natural birthright that it is. This creates an upward spiral where self-love generates more love, which reinforces your self-worth, which attracts even more positive experiences into your life. Chapter 2. The Science of Self-Worth. To understand how to build genuine self-love, we need to first understand what's happening in your brain when you experience self-worth versus self-rejection. Neuroscience has revealed fascinating insights about how our brains process self-related thoughts and emotions, and this knowledge gives us a roadmap for rewiring our internal relationship. When you think positively about yourself, your brain's reward centers light up, releasing dopamine and serotonin, the same chemicals associated with joy, satisfaction, and well-being. This isn't just feel-good psychology, it's measurable brain chemistry. Neuroimaging studies show that people who practice self-compassion have increased activity in regions associated with emotional regulation, motivation, and resilience. Conversely, when you engage in self-criticism or self-rejection, your brain activates the same regions that respond to physical pain. This is why harsh self-judgment literally hurts, and why people often describe emotional pain in physical terms. Heartbreak, gut-wrenching, crushing disappointment. Your brain can't distinguish between physical threats and emotional ones, so self-attack triggers the same stress response as being chased by a predator. This chronic activation of your stress response system has devastating effects on your health, decision-making ability, and overall life satisfaction. When your brain is in threat mode, it shuts down higher-order thinking functions like creativity, strategic planning, and emotional regulation. You become reactive instead of responsive, making decisions from fear rather than wisdom. Dr. Kristin Neff's groundbreaking research on self-compassion has shown that people who treat themselves with kindness have lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone that wreaks havoc on your immune system, sleep, and cognitive function. They also show increased heart rate variability, a marker of emotional resilience and the ability to adapt to stress. But here's where it gets really interesting. The brain's neuroplasticity means that you can literally rewire these patterns. Every time you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, you strengthen neural pathways associated with self-acceptance. Every time you speak to yourself with kindness, you're building new brain connections that make self-love more automatic and natural. The default mode network, a network of brain regions active when you're not focused on external tasks, plays a crucial role in self-related thinking. In people with depression and anxiety, this network often generates repetitive, negative thoughts about the self. However, meditation and mindfulness practices can alter the activity of this network, reducing self-critical rumination and increasing self-accepting awareness. Mirror neurons, the brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe others performing the same action, also play a role in self-love. When you treat yourself with compassion, you're more likely to extend that same compassion to others. This creates positive social interactions that reinforce your sense of worth and belonging. The brain's left prefrontal cortex, associated with approach behaviors and positive emotions, becomes more active in people who practice self-acceptance. Meanwhile, the right prefrontal cortex, linked to withdrawal behaviors and negative emotions, becomes less dominant. This shift literally changes your default emotional state from defensive and self-protective to open and self-affirming. Oxytocin, often called the love hormone, is released not just during bonding with others, but also during self-compassionate moments. When you comfort yourself during difficult times, your brain releases the same bonding chemicals that create feelings of safety and connection in relationships. This is why self-love isn't selfish. It's actually preparing your brain to love others more effectively. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, becomes less reactive in people who practice self-compassion. This means you're less likely to perceive threats where none exist, less likely to take things personally, and more able to respond to challenges with clarity rather than panic. Your emotional regulation improves dramatically when you stop treating yourself as an enemy. Research has also shown that self-love affects your brain's reward prediction system. When you genuinely appreciate yourself, your brain gets better at recognizing and anticipating positive experiences. This creates an optimistic bias that helps you notice opportunities and possibilities that self-critical people miss entirely. The anterior cingulate cortex, involved in emotional processing and decision-making, shows increased thickness in people who practice loving-kindness meditation directed toward themselves. This suggests that self-love literally grows the brain regions responsible for emotional intelligence and wise decision-making. Perhaps most importantly, neuroimaging studies reveal that self-love activates the caregiving system in your brain, the same neural networks that fire when a parent comforts a child. This means that learning to love yourself isn't just about changing thoughts. It's about activating ancient mammalian systems designed to promote survival, growth, and thriving. Understanding this science is crucial because it shows that self-love isn't a luxury or self-indulgence. It's a biological necessity for optimal brain function. When you love yourself, you're not being weak or selfish. You're creating the neurochemical conditions for peak performance, emotional resilience, and authentic happiness. Chapter 3. How your childhood programmed you to reject yourself. Every human being is born with an innate sense of worth and self-acceptance. Watch any baby or toddler, and you'll see perfect self-love in action. They don't question their right to exist. They don't worry about whether they're good enough. And they express their needs and desires without shame or apology. They are completely comfortable being themselves, exactly as they are. So what happens? How do we go from this natural state of self-acceptance to the epidemic of self-rejection that plagues most adults? The answer lies in the programming you received during your most formative years, when your brain was literally being shaped by every interaction, message, and experience. Your early caregivers, despite their best intentions, likely passed on their own unhealed wounds and unconscious patterns. If your parents struggled with self-love, they couldn't teach you what they didn't know. If they were raised in environments where love was conditional on performance, they unconsciously recreated those same conditions for you. Perhaps you learned that love had to be earned through achievement. Maybe you got attention and praise when you succeeded, but were ignored or criticized when you failed. Your young brain, desperate for survival and connection, internalized the message that your worth was dependent on your performance. This created a lifelong pattern of seeking external validation and never feeling good enough. Or maybe you learned that your emotions were inconvenient or wrong. Perhaps when you cried, you were told to stop being dramatic. When you expressed anger, you were punished. When you showed vulnerability, you were told to toughen up. Your brain learned that parts of your authentic self were unacceptable, creating internal rejection of your own emotional experience. Some children learn that their needs are burdens. They're told they're too much or too sensitive. They learn to minimize themselves, to take up less space, to apologize for existing. These children grow into adults who struggle to ask for what they need and feel guilty for having desires or boundaries. Others learn that love is dangerous because the people who claimed to love them also hurt them. Children who experience inconsistent caregiving, where love comes mixed with criticism, neglect, or abuse, develop what psychologists call disorganized attachment. They simultaneously crave love and fear it, creating internal chaos around relationships and self-worth. The trauma of not being seen and accepted for who you truly are creates what Dr. Gabor Mate calls the authentic self wound. Your authentic self, Your natural personality, preferences, and way of being gets buried under layers of adaptive strategies designed to keep you safe and connected. But these strategies, while necessary for childhood survival, become prison walls that prevent genuine self-expression and self-love in adulthood. Your nervous system also gets programmed during these early years. If your environment was chronically stressful, unpredictable, or emotionally unsafe, your nervous system learned to stay in a state of hypervigilance. This creates adults who are constantly scanning for threats, criticism, and rejection, even in safe environments. The chronic stress makes self-compassion feel foreign and dangerous. Cultural and societal messages also shape your relationship with yourself. You absorbed beliefs about gender, success, beauty, and worth that may have nothing to do with your authentic nature. Boys are often taught that emotions are weakness, while girls are taught that anger is unacceptable. These cultural programs create internal conflicts between who you are and who you think you should be. Religious or spiritual environments can also contribute to self-rejection if they emphasize unworthiness, sin, or the need to earn divine love. While many spiritual traditions teach unconditional love, the human interpretation often becomes conditional, creating adults who believe they must be perfect to be worthy of love, even from themselves. School systems that prioritize conformity over individuality teach children that there's a right way and wrong way to be human. Creative, sensitive, or differently wired children often learn that their natural way of being is problematic. They internalize the message that they need to fix themselves rather than celebrate their uniqueness. The development of shame plays a crucial role in self-rejection. Shame isn't just feeling bad about something you did. It's feeling bad about who you are. When children are repeatedly made to feel that they are fundamentally flawed or wrong, shame becomes a core part of their identity. They grow up believing that if people really knew them, they would be rejected and abandoned. Perfectionism often develops as a defense against this deep shame. If you can just be perfect enough, smart enough, successful enough, then maybe you'll finally be acceptable. But perfectionism is actually a form of self-abuse, setting impossible standards and punishing yourself for being human. The inner critic, that harsh voice in your head that constantly judges and criticizes, is often an internalized version of critical voices from your past. It might sound like a parent, teacher, or sibling who was particularly harsh. Or it might be a compilation of all the critical messages you received, now running on autopilot in your mind. Understanding this programming is crucial because it helps you realize that self-rejection isn't your fault, and it isn't the truth about who you are. These patterns were survival adaptations that helped you navigate difficult circumstances. But what was adaptive then may be destructive now, and it's time to consciously choose new patterns that serve your adult self. The good news is that neuroplasticity means your brain can change at any age. The patterns laid down in childhood are strong, but they're not permanent. With conscious effort and the right tools, you can rewire your brain for self-acceptance and genuine self-love. You can become the loving parent to yourself that you may not have had, giving yourself the unconditional acceptance that every human being deserves. Chapter 4. Breaking free from the prison of external validation. One of the most insidious barriers to self-love is the addiction to external validation. This addiction is so prevalent in our society that most people don't even recognize it as a problem. They think it's normal to need approval from others, to feel good about themselves only when others praise them, and to base their self-worth on external achievements and recognition. But here's the truth. As long as your sense of worth depends on external factors, you will never experience genuine self-love. You'll be trapped in an endless cycle of seeking approval, temporary satisfaction when you get it, and devastating emptiness when you don't. You'll be living your life for other people's opinions rather than your own values and desires. External validation addiction shows up in countless ways. Maybe you can't make decisions without asking multiple people for their opinions first. Perhaps you constantly check social media for likes and comments, feeling deflated when your posts don't get the response you hoped for. You might stay in jobs, relationships, or living situations that don't fulfill you because they look good to others. Some people become high achievers, not because they're passionate about their goals, but because achievement brings recognition and admiration. They climb the ladder of success only to discover that each rung requires even more validation to maintain their sense of worth. They become prisoners of their own success, unable to slow down or change direction without feeling like failures. Others become people pleasers, saying yes when they want to say no, agreeing with opinions they don't share, and molding themselves into whatever shape they think will gain approval. They lose touch with their own preferences, desires, and boundaries in their desperate attempt to be liked and accepted. The digital age has amplified this addiction exponentially. Social media platforms are literally designed to trigger your validation-seeking mechanisms. Every like, comment, and share releases a small hit of dopamine, reinforcing the behavior and making you crave more. You start curating your life for the camera rather than living it for yourself. But external validation is inherently unstable and unreliable. Other people's opinions change based on their mood, their own insecurities, their personal agendas, and countless factors that have nothing to do with you. Basing your self-worth on such shifting sands guarantees emotional instability and chronic anxiety. Moreover, people often give approval for the wrong reasons. They might like you when you're successful but withdraw when you struggle. They might approve of you when you conform but reject you when you express your authentic self. They might praise you for qualities that aren't actually your strengths while ignoring the things that make you truly unique and valuable. The validation addiction also creates what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill effect. Each dose of external approval provides temporary satisfaction, but your baseline quickly returns to its previous level, requiring even more validation to achieve the same feeling. It's like being addicted to a drug where you need increasingly larger doses to get high. This addiction is particularly damaging because it prevents you from developing your own internal compass. When you're constantly looking outside yourself for guidance and approval, you never learn to trust your own judgment, intuition, and wisdom. You become disconnected from your authentic self and lose the ability to navigate life from your own center. The fear of disapproval becomes so intense that you start avoiding anything that might trigger criticism or rejection. You play it safe, conforming to others' expectations and never fully expressing who you really are. You deny parts of yourself that might be controversial, unique, or different, creating internal fragmentation and self-rejection. Breaking free from this addiction requires recognizing that external validation can never fill the void of self-rejection. No amount of praise, approval, or recognition from others can substitute for your own self-acceptance. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. You can pour in all the validation in the world, but it will never stay full. The path to freedom begins with understanding the difference between appreciation and validation. Appreciation is when you enjoy and value recognition from others without needing it for your sense of worth. Validation addiction is when you require approval from others to feel okay about yourself. You can learn to appreciate compliments and positive feedback without being dependent on them. You can enjoy success and recognition while knowing that your worth doesn't fluctuate based on external circumstances. This is the difference between having a healthy relationship with feedback versus being addicted to it. Developing internal validation means learning to be your own source of approval and encouragement. It means celebrating your own growth, acknowledging your own efforts, and being proud of yourself regardless of whether anyone else notices or cares. It means trusting your own judgment and making decisions based on your values rather than others' opinions. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive of feedback. Healthy self-love actually makes you more open to constructive criticism because your worth isn't threatened by suggestions for improvement. When you love yourself, you can hear feedback without taking it as a personal attack on your character. The goal is to shift from external validation to internal satisfaction. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" you start asking, "What feels right to me?" Instead of seeking approval, you seek alignment with your authentic self. Instead of performing for others, you start living for yourself. This shift requires courage because it means risking disapproval from others. Some people might not like the authentic you as much as they liked the people-pleasing version. But here's what you'll discover. The people who truly matter will love you more when you're being genuine. And the people who only like the fake version weren't really loving you anyway. When you break free from the validation addiction, you reclaim your power. You stop giving others control over your emotional state and self-worth. You become internally referenced rather than externally dependent. This is one of the most crucial steps in developing genuine, unshakable self-love. Chapter 5. The Self-Love Foundation System. Now that you understand the barriers to self-love, it's time to build the foundation that will support genuine, lasting self-acceptance. This isn't about positive thinking or superficial affirmations. This is about creating a systematic approach to developing an unshakable relationship with yourself based on psychological principles and neuroscience. The foundation of self-love rests on 4 pillars: self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-compassion, and self-care. Each pillar supports and strengthens the others, creating a stable base from which authentic self-love can grow. Let's explore each pillar in detail and give you practical tools for building them. Self-awareness is the first pillar because you cannot love what you do not know. Most people are strangers to themselves, operating on autopilot without really understanding their thoughts, emotions, patterns, and motivations. They react to life from unconscious programming rather than conscious choice. Developing self-awareness means becoming the observer of your own experience, studying yourself with curiosity rather than judgment. Start by noticing your internal dialogue throughout the day. What tone do you use when speaking to yourself? Are you encouraging and supportive, or critical and harsh? Notice the thoughts that arise in different situations. When you make a mistake, what does your inner voice say? When you succeed, how do you respond to yourself internally? Pay attention to your emotional patterns. What triggers anger, sadness, fear, or joy in you? How do you typically respond to these emotions? Do you suppress them, express them, or get overwhelmed by them? Notice how your emotions affect your body, your energy, and your decision-making. Observe your behavioral patterns. What habits do you have that serve you, and which ones sabotage you? How do you react in relationships when you feel hurt or misunderstood? What patterns keep repeating in your life? And what role do you play in creating them? Self-acceptance is the second pillar, and it's perhaps the most challenging for people who have been conditioned to believe they need to earn love through improvement. Self-acceptance doesn't mean giving up on growth or becoming complacent. It means acknowledging reality without resistance, embracing your humanity, and loving yourself as you are right now, not as you hope to become. True self-acceptance means embracing your shadows as well as your light. You have aspects of your personality that you might not particularly like, but rejecting them only gives them more power. When you accept your jealousy, your fears, your insecurities, and your flaws as part of your human experience, you can work with them consciously rather than being controlled by them unconsciously. Practice the radical acceptance exercise. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, I accept myself exactly as I am right now. Notice any resistance that arises. The parts of yourself that feel hard to accept are usually the parts that need the most love and integration. Instead of trying to change or fix these aspects, simply acknowledge them with compassion. Self-acceptance also means accepting your past. You cannot change what has already happened, but you can change your relationship to it. Forgive yourself for past mistakes, not because they were okay, but because holding on to shame and regret prevents you from moving forward. Learn from your experiences without punishing yourself for being imperfect. Self-compassion is the third pillar, and it's the antidote to the inner critic that has been running your life. Dr. Kristin Neff defines self-compassion as treating yourself with the same kindness you would show a good friend who is suffering. It involves recognizing your pain, understanding that suffering is part of the human experience, and responding to yourself with care rather than criticism. When you make a mistake or face a setback, instead of attacking yourself with harsh criticism, practice self-compassion. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? Maybe you need comfort, understanding, encouragement, or simply acknowledgement that this is difficult. Give yourself what you need instead of what you think you deserve, based on your perceived failures. The self-compassion break is a powerful tool. Place your hand on your heart and say, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of life. May I be kind to myself. This simple practice activates your caregiving system and helps regulate your nervous system during difficult times. Self-compassion also involves speaking to yourself with kindness. Notice when your inner voice becomes harsh or critical, and consciously choose different words. Instead of, I'm so stupid, try, I made a mistake, and that's okay. Instead of, I'll never be good enough, try, I'm learning and growing. The language you use with yourself shapes your neural pathways and your emotional reality. Self-care is the fourth pillar, and it goes far beyond bubble baths and spa days. True self-care means taking responsibility for your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. It means making choices that honor your needs and support your growth, even when those choices require discipline or courage. Physical self-care includes nourishing your body with healthy food, regular movement, adequate sleep, and medical care when needed. Your body is the vehicle for your life experience, and caring for it is an act of self-love. This doesn't mean perfection or rigidity, but rather mindful attention to what your body needs to function optimally. Emotional self-care involves creating boundaries, processing emotions in healthy ways, and surrounding yourself with positive influences. It means saying no to things that drain your energy and yes to things that nourish your soul. It includes seeking therapy or counseling when needed, expressing emotions appropriately, and creating space for joy and pleasure in your life. Mental self-care involves feeding your mind with stimulating, positive content while avoiding information and media that increase anxiety or negativity. It means challenging negative thought patterns, learning new skills, and engaging in activities that promote mental clarity and focus. Spiritual self-care, regardless of your religious beliefs, involves connecting with something larger than yourself and finding meaning and purpose in your life. This might include meditation, prayer, time in nature, creative expression, or service to others. It's about nourishing the part of you that seeks transcendence and connection. These four pillars work together synergistically. Self-awareness helps you identify areas where you need more acceptance, compassion, or care. Self-acceptance allows you to be honest about your needs without shame. Self-compassion provides the emotional safety to face difficult truths about yourself. Self-care ensures that you take concrete actions to support your well-being. Building this foundation takes time and consistency. Start with small daily practices in each area and gradually expand them as they become natural habits. Remember that self-love is not a destination, but a practice. You're not trying to achieve perfect self-love. You're committing to treating yourself with increasing kindness, understanding, and care each day. The foundation system creates the stable base from which all other self-love practices can grow. When you have strong self-awareness, genuine self-acceptance, consistent self-compassion, and attentive self-care, you become truly unshakable. External circumstances may challenge you, but your relationship with yourself remains solid and supportive. Chapter 6. Silencing the inner critic forever. The inner critic is perhaps the most destructive force preventing you from loving yourself. This voice in your head constantly judges, criticizes, and undermines your confidence. It tells you that you're not good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, or successful enough. It reminds you of every mistake you've ever made and predicts future failures with devastating accuracy. For most people, this inner critic has become so familiar that they mistake it for their own voice, their own thoughts, their own truth. But here's what you need to understand. The inner critic is not you. It's a collection of internalized voices from your past, cultural programming, and survival mechanisms that once served a purpose, but now sabotage your happiness and success. Learning to identify, understand, and ultimately silence this voice is crucial for developing genuine self-love. The inner critic often develops as a protective mechanism during childhood. If you grew up in an environment where criticism was common, your brain learned to criticize yourself first as a way of avoiding external criticism. The logic was simple. If I can find my flaws before others do, maybe I can fix them and avoid rejection. This self-criticism became a strategy for belonging and survival. The critic also emerges from perfectionist tendencies that many people develop as children. If love and approval were conditional on performance, your brain learned that anything less than perfect was dangerous. The inner critic became the enforcer of these impossible standards, constantly pushing you to do better while simultaneously telling you that your efforts aren't enough. Cultural messages also feed the inner critic. Society bombards us with images and stories of how we should look, behave, and achieve. When we inevitably fall short of these unrealistic standards, the inner critic pounces, using our perceived failures as evidence of our inadequacy. Social media amplifies this by providing endless opportunities for comparison and judgment. The inner critic is particularly vicious because it knows exactly where your vulnerabilities lie. It knows your deepest fears, your most painful memories, and your strongest desires. It uses this intimate knowledge against you, attacking precisely where you're most sensitive. It might tell you that you're too fat, too old, too lazy, too weird, or too damaged to deserve love and success. What makes the inner critic so destructive is that it operates under the guise of motivation and protection. It convinces you that its harsh criticism is necessary for improvement and success. It tells you that without its constant vigilance, you'll become lazy, complacent, or delusional. But research shows the exact opposite. Self-criticism undermines motivation, creativity, and performance, while increasing anxiety, depression, and self-sabotage. The inner critic creates what psychologists call learned helplessness. When you're constantly told that you're not good enough, you eventually stop trying to improve or take risks. You become paralyzed by the fear of failure and criticism. You shrink your life to avoid potential judgment, missing opportunities and experiences that could bring joy and fulfillment. The critic also engages in cognitive distortions, ways of thinking that are inaccurate but feel true. It might engage in all or nothing thinking, telling you that one mistake means you're a complete failure. It might catastrophize, predicting that minor setbacks will lead to total disaster. It might personalize everything, convincing you that external events are somehow your fault. Mind reading is another favorite tactic of the inner critic. It tells you what other people are thinking about you, usually something negative, without any actual evidence. It might say, everyone thinks you're boring, or they're only being nice because they feel sorry for you. These assumptions feel real, but are usually projections of your own self-doubt. The critic also loves to compare you to others, always finding someone who seems more successful, attractive, or happy. It conveniently ignores your unique strengths and circumstances, focusing only on areas where others appear superior. This comparison trap keeps you in a constant state of inadequacy and envy. To silence the inner critic, you first need to recognize it as a separate entity from your true self. Start paying attention to the tone and content of your internal dialogue. Notice when the voice becomes harsh, critical, or discouraging. Many people are shocked when they actually tune in to how cruelly they speak to themselves throughout the day. Give your inner critic a name and even visualize what it looks like. This helps you create distance between this voice and your authentic self. You might imagine it as a strict teacher, a disappointed parent, or even a cartoon villain. The goal is to stop identifying with this voice and start seeing it as an unwelcome guest in your mental space. Challenge the critic's authority by questioning its statements. When it tells you that you're a failure, ask for evidence. When it predicts catastrophe, examine the likelihood of that outcome. When it compares you to others, remind yourself that you're seeing their highlight reel while living your behind-the-scenes reality. Most of the critic's statements crumble under scrutiny. Develop a compassionate inner voice to counter the critic. This voice speaks to you with the same kindness you would show a beloved friend facing difficulties. It acknowledges challenges without adding judgment. It encourages effort without demanding perfection. It offers comfort during setbacks instead of criticism. Practice the loving friend technique. When the inner critic attacks, ask yourself, what would I say to a dear friend in this situation? Then say those same compassionate words to yourself. This simple shift can transform your internal dialogue from enemy to ally. Set boundaries with your inner critic, just as you would with any toxic person in your life. When it starts its familiar rant, you can say, "Thank you for sharing, but I'm not interested in your opinion right now." You can refuse to engage with its negativity and choose to focus on more constructive thoughts. Replace critic statements with neutral or positive alternatives. Instead of, "I'm so stupid," try, "I made a mistake, and I can learn from it." Instead of, "I'll never succeed," try, "This is challenging, and I'm figuring it out." The goal isn't to become unrealistically positive, but to stop the assault of unnecessary negativity. Remember that the inner critic's job was to keep you safe and acceptable to others, but it's using outdated information and strategies that no longer serve you. You can acknowledge its original intention while firmly setting it aside. You can say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I've got this handled now." Meditation and mindfulness practices are particularly effective for managing the inner critic because they help you observe your thoughts without getting caught up in them. When you can watch the critic's commentary with detached awareness, it loses much of its power to upset and control you. The goal isn't to completely eliminate all critical thoughts. Some discernment and self-reflection are healthy and necessary. The goal is to transform harsh, destructive criticism into gentle, constructive feedback. You want to become your own wise and loving coach, rather than your own worst enemy. As you practice these techniques consistently, you'll notice the inner critic's voice becoming quieter and less frequent. The space once occupied by constant self-attack becomes available for self-encouragement, creativity, and authentic self-expression. This transformation is one of the most liberating experiences you can have on your journey to genuine self-love. Chapter 7. The Emotional Mastery Blueprint. One of the biggest obstacles to self-love is the fear and rejection of your own emotions. Most people have been conditioned to view certain emotions as negative, inappropriate, or dangerous. They've learned to suppress, ignore, or judge their emotional experiences rather than understanding and working with them. This emotional disconnection creates internal conflict and prevents the deep self-acceptance that genuine love requires. To love yourself fully, you must learn to love all of yourself, including your emotional landscape. This doesn't mean indulging every emotion or acting on every feeling, but rather developing a healthy, mature relationship with your entire emotional range. Emotional mastery isn't about control or suppression. It's about understanding, acceptance, and skillful response. Every emotion serves a purpose and carries important information about your needs, boundaries, and values. Anger tells you that something important to you is being threatened or violated. Sadness signals loss and the need for comfort and healing. Fear alerts you to potential danger and the need for protection or preparation. Joy indicates alignment with your values and desires. Even seemingly negative emotions like jealousy or shame carry valuable data about your unmet needs and areas for growth. The problem isn't the emotions themselves, but how you've been taught to relate to them. Many people learned in childhood that certain emotions were unacceptable. Boys were often told that sadness and fear were signs of weakness, while girls were taught that anger was inappropriate or unladylike. These messages created internal splits where parts of your emotional self became rejected and suppressed. When you reject your emotions, you reject parts of yourself. This creates internal fragmentation and self-rejection that undermines self-love. You cannot fully love yourself while simultaneously rejecting core aspects of your human experience. Emotional integration is essential for wholeness and authentic self-acceptance. Emotional suppression also has devastating consequences for your physical and mental health. Research shows that people who chronically suppress emotions have higher rates of heart disease, autoimmune disorders, and mental health issues. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They get stored in your body and unconscious mind, where they create tension, illness, and destructive behavioral patterns. The first step in emotional mastery is developing emotional awareness. Most people are surprisingly disconnected from their emotional states, operating on autopilot without really noticing what they're feeling. They might know they feel bad or stressed, but can't identify the specific emotions present or understand what triggered them. Start by checking in with yourself multiple times throughout the day. Ask, "What am I feeling right now?" Notice the physical sensations in your body, as emotions are felt as much as they are thought. Anger might feel like heat in your chest or tension in your jaw. Sadness might feel like heaviness in your heart or tears behind your eyes. Fear might feel like butterflies in your stomach or tightness in your throat. Expand your emotional vocabulary beyond the basic categories of happy, sad, mad, and afraid. There are hundreds of emotional words that describe subtle variations and combinations of feelings. The more precisely you can identify your emotions, the better you can understand their messages and respond appropriately. Practice the RAIN technique for working with difficult emotions. RAIN stands for recognition, allowance, investigation, and non-identification. First, recognize what emotion is present without immediately trying to change or fix it. Then, allow the emotion to be there without resistance or judgment. Investigate the emotion with curious compassion, noticing where you feel it in your body and what it might be trying to tell you. Finally, remember that you are not your emotions. You are the awareness that observes them. Emotional regulation doesn't mean controlling your emotions, but rather choosing how to respond to them skillfully. You can feel angry without becoming aggressive. You can experience sadness without becoming depressed. You can notice fear without becoming paralyzed. The emotion provides information, but you choose the action. Develop a toolbox of healthy emotional regulation strategies. Deep breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system and helps you respond rather than react. Physical movement helps metabolize stress hormones and emotional energy. Journaling helps you process and understand your emotional experiences. Creative expression allows emotions to move through you constructively. Learn to sit with uncomfortable emotions without immediately trying to escape them through distraction, substances, or compulsive behaviors. Our culture teaches us to avoid discomfort at all costs, but this actually amplifies emotional pain and prevents natural healing. When you can stay present with difficult emotions, they typically move through you more quickly and completely. Practice emotional self-soothing, the ability to comfort yourself during emotional distress. This might involve self-massage, gentle movement, soothing music, or comforting self-talk. The goal is to provide yourself with the care and comfort that you might have needed from others but didn't receive. Develop emotional boundaries, the ability to experience your emotions without taking on others' emotions or allowing others to dictate your emotional state. Empathetic people often struggle with this, absorbing others' emotions as their own. Learning to distinguish between your emotions and others' emotions is crucial for emotional clarity and self-love. Challenge emotional perfectionism, the belief that you should only feel positive emotions or that negative emotions are signs of failure or weakness. All emotions are part of the human experience, and trying to feel only positive emotions is like trying to have a day with only light and no darkness. Emotional diversity is emotional health. Practice emotional self-compassion by treating yourself with kindness when you're experiencing difficult emotions. Instead of judging yourself for feeling angry, sad, or afraid, offer yourself the same comfort you would give a good friend. Emotional pain hurts enough without adding the extra layer of self-criticism. Understand that emotions are temporary and constantly changing. The intensity you feel right now will not last forever. Emotions are like weather patterns. They arise, peak, and naturally subside when allowed to flow freely. Reminding yourself of this during intense emotional states helps you maintain perspective and avoid getting overwhelmed. Learn to express emotions appropriately rather than suppressing them or exploding with them. This might mean setting boundaries when you're angry, asking for support when you're sad, or taking protective action when you're afraid. Healthy emotional expression honors both your needs and the needs of others. As you develop emotional mastery, you'll find that your relationship with yourself becomes more accepting and compassionate. You'll stop judging yourself for having human emotions and start appreciating the rich, complex inner world that makes you who you are. This emotional integration is essential for deep, lasting self-love. Chapter 8. Transforming your relationships through self-love. One of the most powerful and immediate benefits of developing genuine self-love is how dramatically it transforms all of your relationships. When you truly love yourself, you show up differently in every interaction. You attract different types of people. You set healthier boundaries, and you create more authentic connections. Most importantly, you stop using relationships to fill the void of self-rejection and start engaging from a place of wholeness and abundance. The relationship you have with yourself is the template for every other relationship in your life. If you're constantly critical, demanding, and unforgiving with yourself, you'll likely attract partners and friends who treat you the same way. If you don't respect your own boundaries, others won't respect them either. If you don't believe you deserve love and kindness, you'll unconsciously choose relationships that confirm this belief. Many people enter relationships from a place of neediness and emptiness, hoping that another person will provide the love, validation, and acceptance they can't give themselves. This creates what psychologists call codependent relationships, where both people are trying to use the other to feel complete. These relationships are inherently unstable because they're based on deficit rather than strength. When you love yourself, you enter relationships as a whole person rather than a half person looking for completion. You bring gifts, love, and joy to share rather than needs and wounds that require healing. This completely changes the dynamic from taking to giving, from neediness to generosity, from fear to love. Self-love also gives you the ability to be truly vulnerable in relationships. Vulnerability requires emotional safety, and you can't feel emotionally safe with others if you don't feel emotionally safe with yourself. When you're constantly attacking yourself internally, opening up to others feels too dangerous because their potential criticism would be added to your existing self-attack. But when you love yourself, you can share your authentic thoughts, feelings, and experiences without the paralyzing fear of judgment. You know that even if others reject or criticize you, you'll still have your own love and support to fall back on. This internal security allows for the deep intimacy that makes relationships truly fulfilling. Healthy boundaries are perhaps the most important relationship skill that emerges from self-love. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that teach others how to treat you. When you love yourself, you naturally protect your energy, time, and emotional well-being. You say no to requests that drain you, and yes to experiences that nourish you. People who lack self-love often struggle with boundaries because they're afraid that setting limits will result in rejection or abandonment. They say yes when they want to say no, tolerate behavior that hurts them, and sacrifice their own needs to keep others happy. But this strategy backfires because it breeds resentment and attracts people who are happy to take advantage of their generosity. When you set healthy boundaries from a place of self-love, you actually improve your relationships. You model self-respect, which encourages others to respect you as well. You're more present and giving in the relationships you choose to invest in because you're not depleted from toxic or draining interactions. Self-love also transforms how you handle conflict in relationships. When you don't love yourself, conflict feels like a threat to your very existence. Criticism or disagreement triggers your deepest fears of rejection and abandonment, causing you to either shut down or become defensive. You take everything personally because your self-worth is constantly in question. But when you love yourself, you can engage in conflict as an opportunity for understanding and growth rather than a battle for survival. You can hear feedback without feeling destroyed by it. You can disagree with others without needing them to validate your perspective. You can work through problems collaboratively rather than defensively. The quality of communication in your relationships improves dramatically when you love yourself. You can express your thoughts and feelings honestly because you're not afraid of your own emotions or others' reactions. You can listen deeply to others because you're not constantly defending yourself or planning your rebuttal. Self-love also helps you choose relationships more wisely. When you're desperate for love and validation, you often settle for relationships that are convenient or available rather than truly compatible and healthy. You might stay with people who don't appreciate you, or enter relationships with people you don't genuinely respect because any relationship feels better than being alone. But when you love yourself, you enjoy your own company and aren't afraid of solitude. This removes the desperation that leads to poor relationship choices. You can be selective about who you invest your time and energy in, choosing people who add value to your life rather than people who simply fill a void. The relationships you already have will also transform as you develop self-love. Some relationships will deepen and become more authentic as you show up more genuinely. Others may fade away as you outgrow dynamics based on mutual neediness or shared complaints. This natural sorting process, while sometimes painful, ultimately leads to a social circle that truly supports and celebrates who you are. Your relationship with family members often shifts significantly when you love yourself. You can appreciate their positive qualities while no longer allowing their dysfunction or criticism to define your self-worth. You can engage with them from choice rather than obligation, setting boundaries that protect your well-being while maintaining connection where possible. Romantic relationships are particularly transformed by self-love. You stop looking for someone to complete you and start looking for someone to complement you. You can love deeply without losing yourself in the relationship. You can maintain your individual identity while creating genuine intimacy. You attract partners who are also whole and secure, rather than needy and codependent. Perhaps most importantly, Self-love gives you the courage to end relationships that are truly toxic or incompatible. When you love yourself, you won't tolerate abuse, manipulation, or chronic disrespect. You understand that being alone is better than being in a relationship that diminishes your spirit or compromises your well-being. The ripple effects of this relationship transformation extend far beyond your personal life. Professional relationships become more productive and enjoyable. You can collaborate effectively, handle workplace conflict maturely, and advance your career without compromising your integrity. You become the kind of person others want to work with because you bring stability, authenticity, and positive energy to your interactions. As your relationships improve, they become a source of joy and support rather than stress and drama. This positive feedback loop reinforces your self-love, creating an upward spiral where better relationships make you feel better about yourself, which attracts even better relationships. You become living proof that loving yourself is not selfish, but rather the foundation for loving others well. Chapter 9. The Self-Love Success Formula. Most people believe they need to achieve success in order to love themselves. They think that once they reach a certain income level, relationship status, or social recognition, they'll finally feel worthy of their own love and acceptance. But this backwards approach guarantees perpetual dissatisfaction, because external achievements can never fill the void of internal self-rejection. The truth is exactly the opposite. Self-love is the foundation of genuine, sustainable success. When you truly love yourself, you make decisions from a place of strength rather than fear. You pursue opportunities that align with your authentic desires rather than what you think will impress others. You persist through challenges because your sense of worth isn't dependent on outcomes. You take risks because you know you can handle whatever happens. Self-love creates what psychologists call an internal locus of control, meaning you recognize that your happiness and success come primarily from your own choices and efforts rather than external circumstances. This mindset is one of the strongest predictors of achievement in every area of life, because it motivates consistent action and resilience in the face of setbacks. When you don't love yourself, you're constantly seeking validation through achievement. This creates a scarcity mindset where you believe there's not enough success, love, or recognition to go around. You compete desperately with others, seeing their success as evidence of your own inadequacy. This competitive desperation actually undermines your performance, because anxiety and fear interfere with creativity, decision-making, and interpersonal skills. But when you love yourself, you operate from abundance rather than scarcity. You celebrate others' success because their achievements don't threaten your worth. You collaborate effectively because you're not trying to prove your value through competition. You take calculated risks because you're motivated by growth and contribution rather than by the need to prove yourself. Self-love also eliminates the self-sabotage that derails so many people just as they're about to achieve their goals. When you don't believe you deserve success, your subconscious mind will find ways to sabotage your efforts. You might procrastinate on important projects, make careless mistakes, or create conflicts that destroy opportunities. Your actions become unconsciously aligned with your belief about what you deserve. When you truly love yourself, you believe you deserve good things, and your actions align with this belief. You follow through on commitments to yourself. You invest in your growth and development. You make choices that support your long-term success, rather than just providing immediate gratification. The self-love success formula operates on several key principles. First, clarity of values and desires becomes possible when you're not constantly seeking approval from others. When you love yourself, you can tune in to your authentic preferences and interests rather than what you think will gain recognition or acceptance. This clarity allows you to set goals that truly motivate you rather than goals that look impressive to others. Second, self-love provides the emotional resilience necessary for sustained effort. Success in any field requires persistence through inevitable setbacks, failures, and periods of slow progress. When you love yourself, these challenges don't threaten your fundamental sense of worth. You can view failures as learning experiences rather than evidence of personal inadequacy. The internal dialogue that accompanies self-love is fundamentally different from the self-criticism that drives most people's efforts. Instead of, "I have to succeed to prove I'm worthy," the internal message becomes, "I deserve to pursue my dreams and express my potential." This shift in motivation from proving to expressing creates much more sustainable and enjoyable success. Self-love also improves your decision-making ability, because You're not clouded by the emotional charge of needing to prove yourself. You can evaluate opportunities objectively, considering what truly serves your growth and happiness, rather than what looks impressive or avoids criticism. This clarity leads to better choices in career, relationships, and life direction. The networking and relationship building that are essential for most forms of success become natural when you love yourself. People are attracted to individuals who are comfortable in their own skin, who don't need constant validation, and who can focus on contributing value rather than extracting approval. Self-love makes you magnetic because you radiate confidence and authenticity. Risk-taking, which is necessary for significant achievement, becomes possible when you love yourself because you know you can handle whatever outcomes arise. You're willing to start businesses, pursue creative projects, or make career changes because your sense of security comes from within rather than from external circumstances. Self-love also enables you to set and maintain boundaries around your time and energy, which is crucial for focusing on what matters most. When you don't love yourself, you often say yes to everything, trying to please everyone and avoid disappointment. This scattered approach prevents the deep focus necessary for mastery and excellence. The compound effect of self-love on success is particularly powerful. Each decision made from self-love tends to create positive outcomes that reinforce your sense of worth and capability. This creates an upward spiral where success builds on success, confidence builds on confidence, and love builds on love. Perhaps most importantly, when success comes from a foundation of self-love, it feels genuinely satisfying. You're not constantly moving the goalposts or feeling empty after achieving your goals because your sense of worth isn't dependent on external validation. You can enjoy your accomplishments while remaining grounded in your inherent value as a human being. The self-love success formula also applies to how you handle failure and setbacks. When you love yourself, you can acknowledge mistakes and areas for improvement without sliding into shame and self-attack. This emotional regulation allows you to learn from failures quickly and get back into action rather than getting stuck in self-recrimination. Goal setting becomes more effective when it's rooted in self-love because you choose objectives that truly matter to you rather than goals designed to impress others or prove your worth. You're more likely to persist with these authentic goals because they're aligned with your genuine desires and values. The success that emerges from self-love is also more holistic and sustainable. You're less likely to sacrifice your health, relationships, or integrity in pursuit of achievement because you value yourself too much to accept those trade-offs. This creates a more balanced and fulfilling version of success that enhances rather than diminishes your overall life satisfaction. Chapter 10. Mastering Self-Love During Life Storms. The ultimate test of your self-love isn't how you treat yourself when everything is going well, but how you respond to yourself during life's inevitable storms. Everyone faces periods of crisis, failure, rejection, loss, and uncertainty. These challenging times reveal whether your self-love is superficial and conditional, or deep and unshakable. Learning to maintain self-compassion during difficulties is what separates temporary self-improvement from genuine transformation. Many people practice self-love only when they feel they deserve it. They're kind to themselves when they're successful, productive, or meeting their own expectations. But the moment they fail, make mistakes, or face setbacks, their self-compassion disappears and is replaced by harsh criticism and judgment. This conditional self-love is actually no love at all, but rather another form of perfectionism disguised as self-care. Genuine self-love is unconditional. It means treating yourself with kindness and understanding, especially when you're struggling, failing, or facing challenges. It means being your own best friend during your darkest moments rather than your own worst enemy. This isn't about lowering standards or making excuses for poor behavior, but about maintaining your fundamental sense of worth, regardless of external circumstances. The storms of life often trigger our deepest wounds and oldest patterns of self-rejection. A job loss might activate childhood feelings of inadequacy. A relationship ending might trigger abandonment fears and the belief that you're unlovable. A health crisis might bring up feelings of vulnerability and mortality that overwhelm your usual coping mechanisms. These events can temporarily hijack your nervous system and throw you back into old patterns of self-attack. Understanding this process is crucial because it helps you recognize that your self-critical thoughts during difficult times aren't necessarily true or helpful. They're often trauma responses, old programming, or the brain's attempt to regain control in an uncertain situation. When you can see these thoughts as symptoms of stress rather than accurate assessments of your worth, you can respond to them with compassion rather than belief. The practice of self-love during storms begins with accepting your humanity. Humans experience pain, make mistakes, face failures, and struggle with challenges. This isn't a sign of weakness or inadequacy. It's part of the human condition. When you can normalize your struggles rather than seeing them as evidence of personal failure, you create space for self-compassion to emerge. Self-soothing becomes essential during difficult times. This means consciously providing yourself with comfort, care, and support when you're hurting. It might involve physical comfort like warm baths, gentle movement, or nourishing food. It might include emotional comfort like journaling, talking to supportive friends, or engaging in activities that bring you joy. The key is actively caring for yourself rather than abandoning yourself during your time of need. Emotional regulation during storms requires understanding that intense emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. When you're in the middle of grief, anxiety, or despair, it feels like the pain will last forever. But emotions are energy in motion, and when allowed to flow naturally, they eventually transform and subside. Fighting against painful emotions, or judging yourself for having them only, intensifies and prolongs the suffering. The inner dialogue during challenging times becomes crucial. Notice if you're adding unnecessary suffering to necessary pain through self-criticism. Pain is inevitable in life, but suffering is often optional and comes from our resistance to what is happening or our harsh judgment of ourselves for being affected by it. Ask yourself, what would I say to a beloved friend going through this exact situation? Then, offer yourself those same words of comfort and understanding. Perspective taking is another powerful tool for maintaining self-love during storms. When you're in crisis, your view becomes narrow and catastrophic. Everything feels permanent and overwhelming. Deliberately expanding your perspective by remembering past challenges you've overcome, considering what this situation might teach you, or imagining how you'll view this period from the future, can help restore balance and hope. Self-advocacy becomes essential during difficult times. This means standing up for yourself, seeking help when you need it, and refusing to tolerate treatment from others that adds to your suffering. Many people become passive victims during crises, accepting poor treatment because they believe their struggles make them burdensome or undeserving of care. Self-love means knowing you deserve support and kindness, especially when you're vulnerable. Boundaries often need to be adjusted during challenging periods. You might need to limit your exposure to negative news, toxic people, or overwhelming obligations. You might need to ask for help with responsibilities that feel too heavy to carry alone. Self-love means protecting your energy and well-being during recovery, rather than pushing through pain out of guilt or obligation. The stories you tell yourself about your struggles profoundly impact your ability to maintain self-love. Are you framing your challenges as evidence of personal failure, or as opportunities for growth and resilience? Are you seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, or as someone courageously navigating a difficult situation? The narrative you choose shapes your emotional experience and your ability to treat yourself with compassion. Self-forgiveness becomes particularly important during storms because crises often involve mistakes, poor decisions, or actions you later regret. You might have said things in anger that you wish you could take back, made choices based on fear that created additional problems, or failed to live up to your own standards during stressful times. Self-love means acknowledging these human imperfections without sliding into shame and self-condemnation. Remember that healing and recovery are not linear processes. You might have good days followed by difficult days, periods of progress followed by apparent setbacks. This zigzag pattern is normal and doesn't indicate failure or lack of progress. Self-love means being patient with your healing timeline, rather than demanding that you get over it on some arbitrary schedule. Creating meaning from your struggles is part of maintaining self-love during storms. This doesn't mean forcing positive interpretations onto genuinely difficult experiences, but rather looking for ways that your challenges might contribute to your growth, wisdom, or ability to help others. Viktor Frankl's research showed that people who can find meaning in their suffering are more resilient and recover more quickly. Professional support becomes an act of self-love during significant challenges. Seeking therapy, counseling, or coaching during difficult times isn't a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. You wouldn't hesitate to see a doctor for a broken bone. Mental and emotional injuries deserve the same level of professional care. Self-love means investing in your healing and well-being. The storms of life ultimately become opportunities to deepen your self-love rather than destroy it. Each challenge you navigate with self-compassion strengthens your confidence in your ability to handle whatever life brings. You develop unshakable faith in your own resilience and worth that can't be destroyed by external circumstances. This is when self-love transforms from a practice into a way of being, an unshakable foundation that supports you through anything life might bring. Chapter 11. Advanced Self-Love Practices for Unshakable Confidence. Once you've established the foundation of self-love, it's time to develop advanced practices that create unshakable confidence and deep self-acceptance. These techniques go beyond basic self-care and positive thinking to address the unconscious patterns and core beliefs that determine how you show up in the world. Mastering these practices will transform you into someone who radiates authentic confidence and attracts success naturally. The first advanced practice is shadow work, which involves identifying and integrating the parts of yourself that you've rejected or hidden. Everyone has aspects of their personality that they consider unacceptable or shameful. Maybe you've rejected your anger because you were taught it was bad. Perhaps you've hidden your sensitivity because you learned it was weakness. Or you might deny your ambition because you were told it was selfish. These rejected parts don't disappear when you deny them. They operate unconsciously, creating internal conflict and self-sabotage. When you judge parts of yourself harshly, you're essentially at war with yourself. This internal conflict drains your energy and prevents authentic self-expression. Shadow work involves acknowledging these rejected aspects with compassion and finding healthy ways to express them. Start by identifying what qualities you most dislike in other people. Often, what we judge harshly in others reflects what we've rejected in ourselves. If you're particularly triggered by arrogant people, you might have rejected your own confidence and ambition. If you judge emotional people, you might have suppressed your own sensitivity. These triggers are gifts that point toward parts of yourself that need love and integration. The practice of loving your flaws is another advanced technique that creates profound self-acceptance. Instead of trying to fix or hide your imperfections, you learn to appreciate them as part of your unique humanity. Your sensitivity might make you vulnerable, but it also makes you compassionate. Your perfectionism might create stress, but it also drives excellence. Your intensity might overwhelm some people, but it also creates passion and depth. This doesn't mean becoming complacent or refusing to grow. It means accepting yourself as you are right now, while working toward who you want to become. You can love your impatience while developing more patience. You can accept your anxiety while building emotional regulation skills. This paradoxical approach eliminates the self-attack that actually prevents change and creates the safety necessary for genuine transformation. Advanced self-love also involves developing what psychologists call unconditional positive regard for yourself. This means maintaining love and respect for yourself, regardless of your behavior, emotions, or circumstances. Even when you make mistakes, act badly, or fail to meet your own standards, your fundamental worth remains intact. This unconditional acceptance creates the emotional safety necessary for honest self-reflection and genuine growth. The practice of internal reparenting is crucial for healing childhood wounds that continue to affect your self-relationship. If you didn't receive the love, attention, or validation you needed as a child, you can learn to provide these things for yourself now. This involves developing different internal voices: a nurturing parent who offers comfort and care, a wise parent who provides guidance and boundaries, and a protective parent who advocates for your needs and safety. When you feel hurt or scared, you can offer yourself the comfort you needed as a child. When you face difficult decisions, you can provide yourself with wise guidance. When others treat you poorly, you can advocate for yourself with strength and clarity. This internal reparenting gradually heals old wounds and creates the secure attachment with yourself that you may have missed in childhood. Visualization and mental rehearsal become powerful tools for building unshakable confidence. Your brain can't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones, so you can literally program confidence into your nervous system through consistent visualization practice. Spend time each day imagining yourself handling challenges with grace, speaking up for yourself confidently, and achieving your goals with ease. Make these visualizations as detailed and sensory-rich as possible. See yourself walking into important meetings with perfect posture and calm confidence. Hear yourself speaking with clarity and authority. Feel the sensation of complete self-assurance in your body. The more real you make these mental rehearsals, the more your brain accepts them as actual experiences and adjusts your self-concept accordingly. Advanced self-love also involves developing what Buddhists call loving kindness for yourself. This is an active practice of sending yourself genuine care, appreciation, and well wishes. Begin each day by placing your hand on your heart and saying something like, "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. May I live with ease." This simple practice activates your caregiving system and programs your nervous system for self-compassion. The practice of celebrating yourself regularly is crucial for building unshakable confidence. Most people are quick to notice their mistakes and failures, but ignore their successes and growth. Advanced self-love means consciously acknowledging your achievements, efforts, and positive qualities. Keep a daily success journal where you record everything you did well, no matter how small. Celebrate your courage, kindness, creativity, and progress regularly. Somatic practices that involve working with your body are essential for embodying self-love rather than just thinking about it. Your body holds memories, emotions, and patterns that thinking alone cannot change. Practices like yoga, dance, breathwork, or massage help release stored tension and trauma while cultivating a loving relationship with your physical self. Notice how you hold your body when you feel confident versus when you feel insecure. Practice embodying confidence through your posture, movement, and presence. Stand tall, make eye contact, speak clearly, and take up appropriate space. Your body language doesn't just reflect your internal state, it actually influences it. When you hold yourself like someone who loves and respects themselves, you begin to feel that way internally. The advanced practice of value-based decision-making ensures that your choices align with your authentic self rather than external expectations. When you truly love yourself, you make decisions based on what honors your values, supports your growth, and serves your highest good. This might mean disappointing others, taking risks, or choosing paths that seem unconventional, but it creates authentic success and deep satisfaction. Develop what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to handle emotional discomfort without immediately trying to escape it. When you can sit with difficult emotions without running away through distractions, substances, or compulsive behaviors, you develop unshakable confidence in your ability to handle whatever life brings. This emotional resilience becomes a source of deep self-trust and inner strength. Practice radical responsibility, which means taking ownership of your role in creating your experiences without sliding into self-blame. This involves recognizing that while you can't control what happens to you, you can always control how you respond. This sense of personal agency and responsibility creates confidence because you know that you have the power to influence your outcomes through your choices and responses. The ultimate advanced practice is learning to be your own source of validation, approval, and love. Instead of constantly seeking these things from others, you provide them for yourself. You acknowledge your own efforts, appreciate your own qualities, and give yourself permission to pursue your dreams. This internal self-sufficiency creates magnetic confidence because you're no longer needy or desperate for external approval. These advanced practices require consistency and patience to master, but they create profound transformation. When you've done the deep work of truly loving yourself, including your shadows and flaws, you become unshakable. External criticism can't destroy you because you know your own worth. Failures can't devastate you because your value isn't based on outcomes. Rejection can't crush you because you have your own love and acceptance. Chapter 12. The Art of Self-Love in Romance and Dating. One of the most challenging areas to maintain self-love is in romantic relationships and dating. The desire for love and connection is so powerful that many people abandon themselves completely in pursuit of romantic validation. They sacrifice their values, ignore red flags, tolerate poor treatment, and lose their identity in relationships. Learning to love yourself while dating and being in relationships is an art that requires conscious practice and strong boundaries. The foundation of healthy romantic relationships is coming to the table as a whole person rather than a half person seeking completion. When you don't love yourself, you enter relationships from a place of neediness and desperation. You see potential partners as saviors who will fix your loneliness, validate your worth, and provide the love you can't give yourself. This creates an imbalanced dynamic where you're willing to do anything to keep the relationship, even if it means betraying yourself. But when you love yourself, you approach dating and relationships from abundance rather than scarcity. You know that you're already complete and that a relationship is meant to enhance your life, not fix it. You're looking for a partner who complements you rather than completes you. This shift in energy is immediately attractive because people are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin and don't need constant validation. Self-love in dating begins with knowing and honoring your values, boundaries, and non-negotiables. Before you even start dating, get clear on what matters most to you in a relationship. What qualities are essential in a partner? What behaviors are absolutely unacceptable? What kind of relationship dynamic do you want to create? When you know these things clearly, you can make decisions that honor your authentic self, rather than just trying to be liked. Many people lose themselves in the early stages of dating by trying to become whatever they think the other person wants. They hide aspects of their personality that might be polarizing, agree with opinions they don't share, and pretend to enjoy activities that don't interest them. This people-pleasing strategy might initially attract someone, but it attracts them to a false version of you, setting up inevitable disappointment and disconnection. Self-love means showing up authentically from the beginning. Even if it means some people won't be interested, it's better to be rejected for who you really are than accepted for who you're pretending to be. When you're authentic, you attract people who genuinely like and appreciate the real you, creating the foundation for healthy, lasting connection. The practice of self-advocacy becomes crucial in dating and relationships. This means speaking up for your needs, expressing your feelings honestly, and refusing to tolerate treatment that doesn't align with your worth. Many people, especially those with people-pleasing tendencies, struggle to advocate for themselves in relationships because they're afraid of conflict or rejection. But self-love requires that you protect yourself from harm, even when that harm comes from someone you care about. If someone consistently cancels plans, shows up late, or treats you disrespectfully, loving yourself means addressing these issues directly rather than making excuses for their behavior. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Emotional regulation becomes essential in romantic relationships because the intimacy and vulnerability involved can trigger your deepest wounds and insecurities. When someone you care about criticizes you, doesn't respond to your texts quickly, or seems distant, it can activate childhood fears of abandonment or rejection. Self-love means recognizing these triggers and responding from your adult self rather than your wounded inner child. This involves developing what psychologists call emotional self-soothing. When you feel triggered in a relationship, instead of immediately reacting or demanding reassurance from your partner, you first provide comfort and understanding to yourself. You remind yourself of your worth, offer yourself compassion for feeling hurt, and choose a response that honors both your needs and the relationship. The ability to be alone and enjoy your own company is crucial for healthy relationships. When you're afraid of being alone, you'll tolerate almost anything to avoid that fear. You'll stay in relationships that don't serve you, ignore major incompatibilities, and sacrifice your authentic self to maintain connection. But when you genuinely enjoy your own company, being single becomes a viable and attractive option, giving you the freedom to choose relationships that truly enhance your life. Self-love also means maintaining your individual identity within relationships. Many people lose themselves in romantic partnerships, giving up their friends, hobbies, goals, and interests to merge completely with their partner. While intimacy requires some compromise and adjustment, healthy relationships allow both people to maintain their unique identities while creating something beautiful together. This means continuing to pursue your own interests, maintaining friendships outside the relationship, and having goals that don't revolve around your partner. It means being able to disagree with your partner while still loving them. It means supporting each other's growth, even when that growth takes you in different directions. The practice of conscious communication becomes an expression of self-love in relationships. This means expressing your thoughts, feelings, and needs clearly and directly rather than expecting your partner to read your mind or guess what's wrong. It means taking responsibility for your own emotions rather than blaming your partner for how you feel. It means listening to understand rather than listening to defend or attack. Self-love in relationships also involves accepting your partner as they are rather than trying to change them into who you think they should be. When you love yourself, you don't need your partner to be perfect, because you're not trying to use them to validate your worth. You can appreciate their positive qualities while accepting their human flaws and limitations. This doesn't mean tolerating behavior that's harmful or incompatible with your values. It means distinguishing between minor human imperfections and major character flaws or incompatibilities. Self-love gives you the clarity to see the difference and the courage to make difficult decisions when necessary. The ability to end relationships that aren't serving you is perhaps the ultimate expression of self-love in romance. When you truly love yourself, you won't stay in relationships that consistently make you feel bad about yourself, require you to compromise your core values, or prevent you from growing and expressing your authentic self. This doesn't mean ending relationships at the first sign of difficulty or conflict. All relationships require work and commitment. But self-love means recognizing when you've done the work and the relationship still isn't healthy or fulfilling. It means choosing your own well-being over the comfort of familiarity or the fear of being alone. The goal isn't to become selfish or closed off in relationships, but to maintain your connection to yourself while creating deep intimacy with another. When both people in a relationship love themselves, they can love each other more fully because they're not trying to use the relationship to fill internal voids or heal childhood wounds. Self-love in romance creates the foundation for the kind of mature, healthy love that actually lasts. It allows for true intimacy because both people can be vulnerable without losing themselves. It creates space for growth because neither person is threatened by the other's evolution. It provides stability because both people's worth is internally sourced rather than dependent on the relationship's status. Chapter 13. Living your truth through radical self-acceptance. Living authentically is one of the highest expressions of self-love. Yet it's also one of the most challenging. Authenticity requires the courage to be yourself, even when that self doesn't match others' expectations, cultural norms, or your own past identity. It means expressing your true thoughts, feelings, desires, and values, even when doing so might result in judgment, rejection, or conflict. Most people live according to what psychologist Carl Jung called the persona, the mask they wear to be acceptable to others. This persona is constructed from childhood messages about who you should be, cultural expectations about your role and identity, and strategic calculations about what will gain approval and avoid rejection. While the persona serves a protective function, living primarily through this false self creates a profound disconnection from your authentic nature. The cost of inauthenticity is enormous. When you constantly suppress your true self to fit in or be liked, you experience what psychologists call identity foreclosure. You never fully develop or express your authentic personality, talents, and potential. You make life choices based on what looks good rather than what feels right. You enter relationships and careers that don't truly fit you because they match your persona rather than your authentic self. This internal split between your true self and your presented self creates chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. Your nervous system is constantly on alert, monitoring for threats to your carefully constructed image. You can never fully relax because you're always performing, always managing others' perceptions, always afraid of being found out as different from who you appear to be. Living authentically through radical self-acceptance means embracing all aspects of yourself, including the parts that might be unconventional, controversial, or different from what others expect. It means honoring your natural personality, even if you're more introverted than your family wants you to be, more sensitive than your culture values, or more ambitious than your peer group understands. This process often begins with what psychologists call identity exploration, actively investigating who you really are beneath the layers of conditioning and expectation. Start by asking yourself fundamental questions. What do I actually enjoy, independent of what I think I should enjoy? What are my genuine values, not the ones I inherited or adopted to fit in? What kind of life would I create if I knew I couldn't fail and no one would judge me? These questions can be unsettling because they might reveal that you've been living according to someone else's blueprint rather than your own. You might discover that the career you've built doesn't actually interest you, that the lifestyle you've created doesn't fulfill you, or that the person you've been presenting to the world isn't who you truly are. This recognition can trigger what psychologists call an identity crisis. But this crisis is actually an opportunity for authentic self-discovery. Radical self-acceptance involves embracing what makes you different, rather than trying to conform to some imaginary standard of normalcy. Your quirks, unusual interests, unconventional perspectives, and unique way of seeing the world aren't problems to be fixed. They're gifts to be celebrated. The very things that make you different are often your greatest strengths and the source of your unique contribution to the world. This acceptance extends to your emotional nature as well. Maybe you feel things more deeply than others. Or perhaps you process emotions differently. Maybe you need more alone time to recharge. Or you thrive on social connection in ways that seem excessive to others. These aren't character flaws. They're aspects of your authentic nature that deserve respect and accommodation. Living authentically also means expressing your truth, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular. This might involve setting boundaries with family members who want you to be someone you're not, pursuing career paths that don't match others' expectations, or sharing opinions that differ from your social group's consensus. Each act of authentic expression strengthens your relationship with yourself and attracts people who appreciate the real you. The fear of rejection often prevents authentic expression, but radical self-acceptance helps you realize that rejection based on your authentic self is actually a gift. When people reject the real you, they're doing you a favor by revealing their incompatibility with your authentic nature. This allows you to invest your time and energy in relationships and opportunities that truly align with who you are. Authenticity also requires what Brené Brown calls shame resilience, the ability to move through shame without being paralyzed by it. Shame tells us that we're fundamentally flawed and unworthy of love and belonging. It attacks our identity rather than our behavior, saying, "I am bad," rather than, "I did something bad." Shame thrives in secrecy, silence, and judgment, and it's often triggered when we express our authentic selves. Building shame resilience involves recognizing shame when it arises, reaching out for support rather than isolating, and speaking about your experience rather than suffering in silence. It means normalizing your human imperfections and recognizing that everyone has aspects of themselves they struggle to accept. The goal isn't to eliminate shame entirely, but to prevent it from controlling your choices and preventing authentic expression. Living authentically also means aligning your life choices with your values rather than external expectations. This involves making decisions about career, relationships, lifestyle, and goals based on what truly matters to you, rather than what will impress others or meet cultural standards of success. You might choose a lower-paying job that fulfills you over a high-paying one that drains you. You might prioritize creativity over security, or relationships over achievement. These choices often require courage because they might disappoint others or diverge from conventional paths. Family members might not understand your choices. Society might question your priorities. But living authentically means trusting yourself enough to make decisions that honor your true nature, even when those decisions seem risky or unconventional to others. The practice of authentic expression also involves sharing your genuine thoughts and feelings rather than saying what you think others want to hear. This doesn't mean being tactless or insensitive, but it does mean being honest about your perspectives, preferences, and experiences. It means contributing your unique voice to conversations rather than just echoing what seems acceptable. Authenticity in relationships means showing up as yourself rather than who you think others want you to be. This includes sharing your struggles and vulnerabilities rather than pretending to have it all together. It means expressing your needs and boundaries clearly rather than expecting others to guess what you want. It means being willing to disappoint others when necessary to maintain your integrity. The paradox of authentic living is that while it might initially result in some rejection or conflict, it ultimately attracts deeper, more satisfying relationships and opportunities. When you're genuinely yourself, you attract people and situations that appreciate your authentic nature. You stop wasting energy on relationships and pursuits that require you to be someone you're not. Living authentically through radical self-acceptance is ultimately an act of service to the world. When you fully embrace and express your authentic self, you give others permission to do the same. You become a living example of what's possible when someone has the courage to be genuinely themselves. Your authenticity becomes a gift that inspires others to discover and express their own true nature. This doesn't mean authenticity is selfish or self-indulgent. True authenticity includes considering the impact of your choices on others and finding ways to express your truth that honor both your needs and your responsibilities. But it means making these considerations from a place of self-love and authenticity rather than self-rejection and conformity. Chapter 14. The compound effect of self-love over time. Understanding the compound effect of self-love is crucial for maintaining motivation during the inevitable challenges of personal transformation. Like financial investments that grow exponentially over time, small daily acts of self-love accumulate to create profound changes in your life, relationships, and overall well-being. The key is recognizing that self-love isn't just about feeling better in the moment. It's about creating a trajectory that gets better and better as time passes. In the beginning stages of developing self-love, the changes might feel subtle or even imperceptible. You might practice self-compassion for a few weeks and not notice dramatic shifts in your confidence or life circumstances. This is where many people give up, thinking that self-love practices aren't working or aren't worth the effort. But this initial phase is like planting seeds. The growth is happening underground, building root systems that will eventually support enormous transformation. The compound effect works through neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated experiences. Every time you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, you strengthen neural pathways associated with self-acceptance. Every time you set a healthy boundary, you reinforce circuits related to self-respect. Every time you practice authentic expression, you build networks supporting genuine confidence. These neural changes start small but accelerate over time. After several months of consistent self-love practices, you'll notice that self-compassion becomes more automatic. Negative self-talk naturally decreases, while positive self-regard increases. Your default emotional state shifts from anxiety and self-doubt to calm confidence. These internal changes then begin to manifest in external circumstances. The first area where you'll typically notice the compound effect is in your decision-making. When you love yourself, you naturally make choices that support your well-being and growth. You might start eating healthier, exercising regularly, or pursuing learning opportunities. You begin saying no to commitments that drain you, and yes to experiences that energize you. Each better decision creates better outcomes, which reinforces your sense of self-worth and leads to even better decisions. Your relationships undergo a dramatic transformation through the compound effect of self-love. As you develop stronger boundaries and clearer communication, toxic relationships naturally fall away while healthy ones deepen. You attract different types of people because you're radiating different energy. Partners, friends, and colleagues respond to your increased confidence and authenticity by treating you with more respect and care. The professional benefits of self-love compound significantly over time. Increased confidence leads to better performance, which creates more opportunities, which builds even greater confidence. You're more likely to speak up in meetings, take on challenging projects, negotiate for better compensation, and pursue leadership roles. Your growing reputation for competence and reliability opens doors that seemed impossible when you lacked self-worth. Health improvements also compound through self-love practices. When you value yourself, you naturally take better care of your body through nutrition, exercise, sleep, and stress management. These physical improvements increase your energy and mental clarity, making it easier to maintain other self-love practices. Better health also boosts confidence and mood, creating an upward spiral of well-being. The financial benefits of self-love are often overlooked, but incredibly significant. When you believe you deserve abundance, you're more likely to pursue higher-paying opportunities, invest in your skills and education, and make wise financial decisions. You stop sabotaging your success through imposter syndrome or unworthiness beliefs. You negotiate better deals, avoid financial relationships that exploit you, and build wealth that supports your authentic desires. Creative expression flourishes through the compound effect of self-love. As you become more accepting of yourself, you're willing to take creative risks and share your unique perspective with the world. This creative expression often leads to unexpected opportunities, deeper self-discovery, and increased life satisfaction. Many people discover hidden talents and passions when they finally give themselves permission to explore without judgment. The spiritual benefits of self-love compound into profound wisdom and inner peace. As you develop unconditional self-acceptance, you naturally extend that same acceptance to others. Judgment and criticism decrease while compassion and understanding increase. You develop what Buddhist traditions call equanimity, a peaceful state that isn't disturbed by external circumstances, because your sense of worth comes from within. Resilience is perhaps the most valuable compound benefit of self-love. Each challenge you navigate with self-compassion strengthens your confidence in your ability to handle future difficulties. You develop unshakable faith in your capacity to recover from setbacks, learn from failures, and adapt to change. This resilience becomes a tremendous competitive advantage in every area of life. The generational impact of self-love creates perhaps the most meaningful compound effect. When you love yourself, you model healthy self-relationship for your children, family members, and community. You break cycles of self-criticism and shame that might have been passed down through generations. Your self-love becomes a gift that ripples out to everyone whose life you touch. The compound effect also works in reverse, which is why early intervention in self-love practices is so crucial. Years of self-criticism and self-rejection create compound damage to your confidence, relationships, and life outcomes. The longer you wait to develop self-love, the more damage you'll need to heal, and the longer it will take to see positive results. This is why consistency matters more than intensity in self-love practices. Small daily acts of self-compassion are more powerful than occasional dramatic gestures of self-care. 5 minutes of daily self-appreciation creates more transformation than a monthly spa day if the rest of your internal dialogue is harsh and critical. The compound effect means that starting your self-love journey today, regardless of your age or circumstances, will create benefits that extend far into your future. The person you become through years of loving yourself will be dramatically different from who you are now. Your relationships will be healthier, your achievements will be greater, and your overall life satisfaction will be immeasurably higher. Understanding this compound effect helps you stay motivated during difficult periods when progress feels slow or non-existent. Trust that every act of self-love is building towards something beautiful, even when you can't see immediate results. Your future self will thank you for every moment you chose compassion over criticism, authenticity over performance, and self-care over self-neglect. The ultimate compound effect of self-love is becoming someone who naturally inspires others to love themselves as well. Your presence becomes a permission slip for others to treat themselves with kindness. Your example shows what's possible when someone truly accepts and appreciates themselves. This influence extends far beyond what you can measure, creating ripples of healing and transformation that touch countless lives. Chapter 15. Becoming your most loved self. You've reached the final chapter of this transformation, but this isn't an ending. It's a graduation into a new way of being. Everything you've learned about self-love is meaningless unless you integrate it into your daily life and become someone who consistently loves themselves more than anyone else. This final chapter is about embodying everything you've discovered and stepping fully into your power as someone who is unshakably committed to their own well-being and growth. Becoming your most loved self means that self-love is no longer something you practice occasionally, when you remember, or when you're feeling particularly motivated. It becomes your default way of operating in the world. Self-compassion becomes as natural as breathing. Setting boundaries becomes automatic. Authentic expression becomes effortless. You've rewired your brain so thoroughly that loving yourself is simply who you are, not something you have to work at. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't mean you'll never have moments of self-doubt or self-criticism. What it means is that these moments become brief exceptions rather than your normal state. When negative self-talk arises, you notice it quickly and redirect it with compassion. When you make mistakes, you recover faster because your self-worth isn't dependent on perfection. When others criticize or reject you, it doesn't devastate you because your foundation is solid. Your most loved self operates from abundance rather than scarcity. You give love freely because you have an endless supply within yourself. You pursue opportunities from excitement rather than desperation. You make decisions based on what aligns with your authentic self rather than what will gain approval. You attract success naturally because you're no longer blocking it with unworthiness beliefs. The relationships in your life reflect this transformation. You're surrounded by people who appreciate and celebrate your authentic self because you've stopped tolerating those who don't. You communicate clearly and directly because you're not afraid of your own truth. You support others' growth and success because their achievements don't threaten your sense of worth. You create the kind of love and connection you once desperately sought from others. Your career or life purpose flourishes when you become your most loved self because you're finally willing to pursue what genuinely excites you rather than what seems safe or impressive. You take calculated risks because you trust your ability to handle whatever outcomes arise. You express your unique gifts and perspectives boldly because you know they have value. You create work that feels like play because it's aligned with your authentic nature. The daily life of your most loved self looks different from your old patterns. You wake up with appreciation for another day to express your potential, rather than anxiety about what might go wrong. You make choices throughout the day that honor your needs and values. You speak to yourself with the same kindness you'd show a beloved friend. You end each day with gratitude for your efforts and growth, rather than criticism for your perceived shortcomings. Your most loved self handles challenges with grace and wisdom. Instead of collapsing into victimhood when difficulties arise, you ask yourself what you can learn and how you can grow from the experience. You seek support when you need it without shame or apology. You take responsibility for your role in creating your experiences without sliding into self-blame. You bounce back from setbacks faster because your resilience is built on a foundation of self-love. The physical health of your most loved self improves naturally because you value yourself enough to care for your body properly. You eat nourishing foods because you deserve good nutrition. You exercise regularly because you enjoy feeling strong and energetic. You get adequate sleep because you prioritize your well-being. You seek medical care when needed because your health matters to you. Your emotional life becomes richer and more stable when you're living as your most loved self. You experience the full range of human emotions without judgment, knowing that feelings are temporary visitors that carry important information. You express emotions appropriately rather than suppressing them or exploding with them. You comfort yourself during difficult times rather than adding self-criticism to your pain. The mental clarity of your most loved self is remarkable. Your mind is no longer cluttered with constant self-criticism and worry about others' opinions. You can focus deeply on what matters to you because you're not distracted by internal conflict. You make decisions more quickly and confidently because you trust your judgment. You learn and grow continuously because you're not afraid of making mistakes. Your most loved self contributes to the world in meaningful ways because you're operating from your authentic gifts and passions rather than trying to be someone you're not. Your unique perspective and talents flow naturally into service that feels fulfilling rather than draining. You make a difference simply by being yourself fully, giving others permission to do the same. The spiritual life of your most loved self deepens naturally because self-love opens your heart to connection with something greater than yourself. Whether you connect with this through religion, nature, creativity, or service, your expanded capacity for love creates space for transcendent experiences. You feel part of something larger, while maintaining your individual identity and worth. Living as your most loved self doesn't mean becoming selfish or self-absorbed. True self-love actually makes you more generous and compassionate toward others because you're operating from fullness rather than emptiness. You can give freely because you have plenty. You can love others deeply because you're not trying to use them to fill internal voids. You become a source of love and light in the world. The legacy of your most loved self extends far beyond your individual life. Your children, if you have them, learn what healthy self-relationship looks like by watching your example. Your friends and family members are inspired to treat themselves with greater kindness because they see what's possible. Your colleagues and community members benefit from your authentic presence and contribution. This is your invitation to step fully into this version of yourself starting right now. You don't need to wait until you've perfected self-love or overcome every insecurity. Your most loved self is available to you in this moment. You can choose self-compassion over self-criticism right now. You can set a boundary that honors your worth today. You can express your authentic truth in your very next conversation. The world needs your most loved self. It needs your unique gifts, your authentic perspective, and your full presence. It needs the love that flows naturally from someone who has learned to love themselves completely. It needs the example you provide of what's possible when someone commits fully to their own growth and well-being. Remember that becoming your most loved self is not a destination but a way of traveling. There will always be new levels of self-love to discover, new aspects of yourself to accept, and new ways to honor your growth and potential. The journey never ends, but each step becomes more joyful as you learn to walk it with love, compassion, and appreciation for yourself. You now have everything you need to love yourself more than anyone else. The question isn't whether you're capable of this transformation. You absolutely are. The question is whether you're willing to commit to yourself with the same dedication you've given to others. Are you ready to become your own greatest love story? Are you ready to live as your most loved self? The choice is yours, and the time is now. Your most loved self is waiting for you to step forward and claim the life that loving yourself makes possible. Everything you've ever wanted begins with learning to love yourself more than anyone else.